I made a decision at that point that whatever I did next was going to be something that I was proud of. I wanted it to be something that I wanted to talk to my kids about, and I wanted it to be for somebody that also cared. So fast forward, I found an ad on Indeed and met this crazy guy named Ty Bride who was ridiculously excited, just excited and passionate about what he does, and it's infectious. So I spent the first 18 months of my life with Preservan as a territory manager in our corporate location, because before I did anything else, Ty wanted to make sure that I understood what it was like to be a franchisee.
Welcome to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast, where we talk about all things franchising. Now, here's your host, Dr. John P. Hayes.
My guest is James Carey. He's the Director of Franchise Development for Preservan, based in Oklahoma City. And James, I always see you at franchise expos, working the table, giving out your materials, talking to people. And I'm always curious about the success that you're having, what Preservan is doing, why people are joining Preservan. But I also very much like this idea of work-life balance doesn't exist, according to James Carey. I wanted you to talk about that. What's that about, and why do you share that with prospective franchisees?
That's a great question. A lot of it goes back to, like most people, I started my career life in corporate America. And when you're in corporate America, they preach and preach and preach work-life balance. So you're supposed to clock out from being a dad or a friend or a family member or a husband at 8 a.m. every morning, and then you are just an employee, a robot. And it never works, because I don't know about anybody else, but I'm always going to be a dad, right? 24/7. My kids matter to me. At the same time, my career matters to me. My success matters to me. So I think about work at home, and I think about my kids at work. And I struggled for 30 plus years in corporate America with, how do I do this work-life balance thing when it doesn't make any sense? So once I left corporate America and started working for Preservan and met Ty, he could tell that I was struggling. And he asked what my struggle was with. And I told him exactly what I just explained to you. And he introduced me to this term, work-life integration. And I was addicted. I ran with it, and I started researching it. And work-life integration is pretty simple, right? I'm always a proud dad. I'm always a proud franchise and territory developer for Preservan. So what does integration look like? Especially in the franchising world, because some of the people that I speak to are on different time zones than I am, for example. So I have to be flexible with talking to someone on the East Coast versus the West Coast versus somebody in my time zone. So it enables me to really, at its truest form, integrate both parts. A couple weeks ago, before the holidays, my youngest daughter, had a program in school that was at like 10 in the morning. I was able to take a couple of work calls in the morning, remove myself from that, go have fun seeing my daughter's school program, realized I had some extra time before my next call, went and decided to have lunch with my older daughter in high school, got home, was able to have some fantastic calls, able to have some time with Ty, who's our founder, to talk about different ideas and upcoming things for 2025. I never missed a bit of what I needed to do to be successful on both sides of my life. Work-life balance tells you that you can only do one thing at a time. Work-life balance tells you that you can only either be a person or you can be an employee, which is not true. If you integrate those two, you can find out that you're actually better at both of those, because you're not trying to overdo one versus the other. You're allowed to be just great at the things that you're passionate about.
Great point. So you share that with prospective franchisees who you meet at expos. I hear you talking about that. How does that go over with people?
It's a concept that a lot of people haven't thought about. But when you're talking to prospective franchisees, there's not that any of them are less important, but there are certain things that you're bound to hear, right? Number one, I'm sick of corporate America. Two, I'm sick of missing things. I miss things in my personal life. I miss things with my kids. I miss things with my spouse. I'm unable to do these things. Well, why? Well, because, my schedule. I clock in at this time, I leave at this time, and we had an issue a couple of months ago, so I don't have any PTO left. Well, why would you do that? Why would you give up important moments in your life for your career? Why would you give up important points in your career for something else? So I talked to them
Mhm.
about work-life integration because I want them to understand that, our founder here at Preservan, 6 kids, wife, lot going on with this
Mm.
family. Me, 6 kids, wife, lot going on with my family. We also have a shared
Wow.
love and passion for what has done and what we're going to do. So when I talk to prospective candidates about what does it look like, I bring it up because I ask them, what is your perfect day at work? What does your perfect week sound like to you? And it's nothing usually crazy. It's, I want to do good things for good people, and I want to be able to have great relationships with the people that I work with and with my family. But I don't know how to do that because my corporate job says A, B, and C are the only ways I can be successful. So I speak about work-life integration because I want them to understand that, especially in franchising, and not just with our brand. I mean, obviously I'm a little partial to Preservan, but in franchising in general, it opens up the ability for people to achieve the things that they want to achieve on both sides of the fence. And that's what's important for me is to realize. Because here's the thing, is everybody I talk to going to be the perfect candidate for Preservan? Maybe not. Probably not. Do I believe that there is a brand out there for everyone that because of what franchising offers? Absolutely. So it's important for me that even if it's not with Preservan, when I speak to those people at the expos, I want them to understand that franchising is a life-changing opportunity to create new experiences in personal and in their career path.
So, what were you doing before franchising, and how did you discover franchising?
I was in corporate America. I worked for one of the biggest automotive companies globally as a traveling trainer. I traveled multiple countries in different states training new dealership owners on how to be successful in their management staff. The short version is my wife got really, really sick. She needed help. I was the person that was home less than 15 days a year. I couldn't be a good husband and a
Mm.
good dad being not there, so I chose to leave my career. I came home, I took some time off. I created a space where I could be there for her and the kids. And at that point, during that time, I realized that while the money was great, I was actually pretty miserable in my everyday life at work. I was never home. Everything that I just said is what I did. I missed first steps. I missed first days of school. I missed first birthdays. I missed all of those things because I thought I was doing the right thing because it was money, money, money. I made a decision at that point that whatever I did next was going to be something that I was proud of. I wanted it to be something that I wanted to talk to my kids about, and I wanted it to be for somebody that also cared. So fast forward, I found an ad on Indeed and met this crazy guy named Ty Bride who was ridiculously excited, just excited and passionate about what he does, and it's infectious. So I spent the first 18 months of my life with Preservan as a territory manager in our corporate location because before I did anything else, Ty wanted to make sure that I understood what it was like to be a franchisee. That was my introduction to franchising, is what does it look like to be a franchisee, to own and operate a business. So I ran the corporate location exactly as I would to a franchisee, and I learned that side of it. And then through that process, Ty spent a lot of time with me teaching me about the other side of franchising. I knew what it was like to be a franchisee. Now let's talk about what it looks like to be a Zor. And he introduced me to a ton of material, a lot of your stuff. First of all, a ton of Charles and Turnicola's stuff, some 1851 stuff, some great books, and I just dove headfirst into it and learned what it was about. And then that's what brought me to where I am now as the territory developer for Preservan.
Had you heard of franchising previously to Preservan and meeting Ty, or was this something you thought, well, that's $1 million, buy a McDonald's, I'm not going to do that type of
Well, that's
person?
really what I had heard about franchising was that if you own a
Right.
franchise, you own a McDonald's or you own a Burger King or you own a this or a that, and it's funny because in the automotive world, when you look at dealerships, it's a form of franchising because they're all privately
Yeah.
owned. Never put the two together. Never even crossed my mind. And just like you said, I looked at franchising long enough to go, wait a minute, you want me to spend $1 million+ dollars to buy another cheeseburger joint? No, thanks. I'm good. I'll just keep my corporate job.
Mhm.
I had no idea that 90% of the companies I dealt with on a daily basis as a person were probably a franchise.
Right. And that they don't all cost $1 million. And in fact, and I generally don't promote brands because I'm not about selling franchises. I'm about educating
Sure.
people about franchising. But because of what we've been discussing, it would be timely to say that Preservan is under a $100,000 investment, if I understand that
Correct.
correctly. And what do franchisees do in Preservan? They work out of they work from home. I know that, or it's home
Yeah.
based. They work out of a van. Tell us a little bit about that
So
opportunity.
Preservan is exactly what you said. We are home service and we are home based. So a day in the life of one of our franchisee owners is they're going to have technicians in place and they're going to have a territory manager that's doing their assessments. So what we want our franchisees to do is to really get involved in their community, make a difference in their community, mingle, network. We want them to get involved with the Chamber of Commerce and we want them to have direct connections. We don't have customers or clients at Preservan. We have neighbors. The reason for that, and I'll tell you the short version of this, is early on in Ty's career, before Preservan in another company, he had a job that didn't go great, and it was for a neighbor just down the street from him. And he went to the grocery store one day to pick up some stuff and saw that neighbor in the aisle that he wanted to go in. And it was at that moment that Ty realized he had to make a decision. He could either treat that person like a customer and dodge him and go a couple aisles down and skip on what he needed down that aisle, or he could be a good neighbor and he could walk down that aisle and approach that person and make the job good. And that's what he chose to do. And out of that became a successful job. And out of that became a neighbor that he is still friends with and for lack of better terms, on a good neighborly, relationship with.
Yeah.
So with that being said, we want our franchisees to get to know the neighbors. So we push and train, and we have a lot of stuff going on for our franchisees on a weekly basis. We do mastermind calls, we do support calls, we do one-on-one calls to discuss everything from marketing strategy to even if it's just a win because they just accomplished an amazing job. But they're going to run their day-to-day operations either through themselves or through a territory manager. They're going to make sure that their technicians are happy and being cared for while they're taking great care of our neighbors, and they're going to work and concentrate on growing their business in a positive way.
What are they doing? What's a Preservan franchisee preserve?
So we work with obviously Preservan wood rot repair, but it's more than just rot. It's wood decay. So if you have wood rot, which is fungal, you can have pet damage, you can have carpenter bee damage, you can have termite damage. If you had 6 crazy kids like I did, you're bound to have some kid damage in your home. We use a proprietary epoxy and resin system to go in and repair that instead of replace it. So what that looks like is we're usually 70 to 90% less than the cost of replacement. We're usually 3 to 4 times faster, and we're also preserving our nature because we're not cutting down more to replace more. We're able to repair and save.
Yeah. How many franchisees in the network now?
So we have 13 locations, 14 counting our corporate location.
Okay. And you're new. You're an emerging company. So this has been, how long have you been working these expos and finding your new franchisees?
We kicked off with our first franchise in February or March of 2023. So we are very new, very young. 2023 was concentrated more on us learning. 2024 is when we kicked off expos and just pushing ourselves out there more. So we have a lot more rolling out in 2025 that I can't say just yet, but we have some amazing things coming out in 2025. 2024 has been a fantastic year for us. I know there was a lot of worry about, it's an election year or whatever that looks like, but we found amazing growth through that.
And do you do an item 19 in your FDD?
We absolutely do.
So you Great. So you can talk about for less than $100,000 investment to become one of your franchisees. Let's say after 3 years, because you got to ramp
Sure.
up and you got to get going. Things don't you don't make big money overnight usually in franchises. But where would you be? Where would a franchisee typically be in that third year of ownership and development of the business, and providing they follow your system?
Providing that they follow our process and allow us to work with them, it's very safe to say that they're going to be, in the least, they're going to be doing around $167,000 a year per technician, and they're going to be doing an average
Mhm.
job of about $1,800 with a 71% gross profit back to the franchisee.
Okay. So a franchisee has how many technicians, and therefore in that third year will be taking home how much money?
Depending on a lot of that also depends on the franchisee, on what they communicate with us, on what they want their path of growth to be, and with their size of their
Yeah.
territory that they own. So anywhere from one to, we have a couple locations right now operating with three technicians. So, going back to our item 19, if you're running three technicians for a full year, you're looking at around the 160 to $170,000 range per vehicle or per technician per year. And again, back with that 71% gross profit. And that's going off of our current item 19. And of course, we have a new one that'll be
Yeah.
released early next year that is, let's just say I'm pretty excited about that one coming out.
Yeah, good. Great. So this is a hands-on franchise, or do you look for people who want to be marketers and managers and they don't want to do the technician work?
We prefer an executive model, which has been our most successful, which is where you have a franchise owner in place that's going to do their marketing and their networking and do that while they have a team of technicians and a territory manager that's going to run their assessments and schedule their technicians for them. That's been our most successful
Yeah.
business model. But we also do have a couple locations where we have some owners that say, no way, man, I want to get in it. I want to do it. And they're out there day to day doing the assessments and
Yeah.
helping their technicians. But it's also important to know that we train through our training process. Our owners, our territory managers, and our technicians are all trained on how to do both parts of the job. So everybody knows exactly what they're doing.
Michael Gerber says that technicians do not become good business owners because they're technicians. They like to go roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty, and do the work. And there's nothing wrong with that. Somebody's got to do the work. But when they're technicians, they're not likely to focus on marketing and management and hiring another technician. They want to be on the truck,
Correct.
or they want to be on the job. But a business owner manager is more likely going to be in the office or involved in the community doing marketing, creating opportunities for technicians. What do you think about that?
I could not agree more. I think that's exactly right.
Okay.
Most of part of what we look for with a technician are exactly what you look for. We want you to have we want our technicians to have a high level of detail orientation, but we also want them to be okay with not being able to, being real sociable. We want them to be able to concentrate on their work. On the other hand, just
Yeah.
like you said, when we look for franchise owners, we don't look for necessarily construction experience or handyman experience. What we look for is positive leadership and positive management experience. We want you to understand the process that your technician goes through, because if you don't know how to do what they do, you won't know if they're doing it correctly. But we
Mhm.
want our franchise owners to trust and believe in their technicians that they're going to do a good job, and to allow them in their space to do that. Our franchise owners, we want our franchise owners to do exactly what you just said. We want them to be the face. We want them to get out there and make sure that everybody knows who they are while supporting their staff. Those are the biggest keys.
Now, back to this work-life balance idea. I teach Gen Zs. That's the current college age, young people who are 18, 19, 22, 23 years old. They're in college classes. I'm very fortunate at Palm Beach Atlantic University to teach franchising, as you know. And so I have about 60 students who are pursuing a concentration in franchising while they get a major in marketing or international business or accounting or leadership, whatever it might be. But when they graduate at the end of 4 more years. Probably the most valuable knowledge they have is the concentration in franchising, especially because it leverages everything else they know about marketing or international business. And they're very employable, these young people, because who knows anything about franchising at that age? Very few people do. So my young people will get 2 to 3 offers when they come upon May, which is graduation time, and they're very happy to get involved in franchise businesses. Some as franchisees. I've graduated 61 to date. 10 of them have bought franchises. A couple dozen work for franchise companies. So this gives them an advantage that others don't have. Somebody else graduates with a major in marketing and they've got a 4.0. That's great. So do lots of people. But a 3.3 with a concentration in franchising is going to get the job before that 4.0 with no franchise experience or no franchise education is going to get. How often are these folks coming to see you? Because you have Preservan is an under $100,000 investment. That's where these young people are going to look. They're not spending $500,000, generally not getting into a food business.
So you're exactly right, and it grows every single time every expo I go to. I realize that I'm talking to a younger and younger audience, and the cool thing about what
Yeah,
you do is if you sit back and think about it, every single one of your students are living a work-life integration right now because you can't do
yeah,
balance when you're in school because you got to have a social life and you have to work and you have to do good at your studies. So what they're practicing every single
right.
day is the ability to positively integrate all parts of their life to where it makes sense. So when you visit with as you say a Gen Z or a younger person than I am, it actually makes more sense to them because through college and through that college life, they're forced to integrate. They can't balance. So it's also very hard for those people when they enter corporate America out of college and now they can't integrate anymore. Now they're supposed to balance these two
Mm,
things off this teeter-totter that they've never seen before. So
mhm.
introducing franchising through a program like yours, which by the way, you and I have had many conversations about this. I'm a huge fan of what
Yeah,
you do, but you're
thank you.
also teaching work-life integration at its core. And when they step out
Yeah,
of that program and go into franchising, it's so much
yeah,
easier for them to incorporate what they need to do to be successful. And the more I
yeah.
talk to people, and I've had some conversations with some of your students, met one amazing young lady, obviously at the FranServe convention this past year, and then
Yeah.
you always
Uh-huh.
have a cool entourage of students at expos, so it's always a great
Right.
experience. But speaking to them,
Yeah,
going through that program, it gives them a different perspective and it
absolutely.
gives them more mature questions that they have while still needing an
Yeah,
answer that relates to them at their age. So it's been a great experience when you
yeah,
talk to those people, or at least when I talk to those people, it's so easy to see where they could be with Preserving in 5 years and in 10 years because their
yeah.
growth
Mhm.
strategy going through a program that centers on franchising is so much more advanced than even I was. I mean, I'm dangerously close to 50 years old, and I'm probably the equivalent of like a first semester student in franchising for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all of that. And these students today coming out of college, they want really work-life integration. They hear it called work-life balance. They're proponents of that because, first of all, they don't want to go to work or join an organization or become a franchisee if they don't believe in the product or the service. And if they're not proud of it, they won't represent it. So they have a lot of integrity, young people today. And then secondly, if it means that they're going to have to travel more often than they want because they are married and then they have a child, they're not going to do that. So franchising is ideal for them. Operating a business is ideal for them, even though operating a business takes all of your life when you're in that phase. But you call the shots as well. And this gives them the opportunity, first of all, to select a product or a company a brand that they want to represent because they're proud of it and they'll build it in their community. And secondly, that it gives them flexibility. And then the third thing is that business and their career has to do good. Do good for the community, do good for neighbors, do good for the church, do good for the school, do good for the state, whatever it might be, they want to improve the quality of life. And franchisors who recognize that will attract more of these younger people, not just the 40 to 50-year-old people who frequently are buying franchises, burned out from corporate America, but you'll start getting the 25-year-old and the 22-year-old involved in the business as well.
I couldn't agree more. And the truth is
Yeah.
as somebody that is in that 50-year-old range, my dream is to have that next generation come up in franchising and realize the opportunity of franchising. I read an article the other day. Franchising, which is considered small business over the last 25 years, has been responsible for over 66% of employment in the US. And roughly over the last
Yeah.
25 years, that's a little over 12.5 million jobs that small businesses have created. And given that most
Yeah.
franchises are still considered small business, I think it's
Mhm.
important, like you said, to touch on what really matters, and that is doing good things for good people, making positive
Yeah.
differences in your community, believing that positive change is possible in your community, and then being an advocate for that, and then being an advocate for small business. Franchising is a super cool gift because I get to support small business in Oklahoma City, and I get to support small business in Athens, Georgia, and I get to support small business in Jacksonville, Florida. And in every single place that we have a location, I can go to bed at night knowing that I am supporting small business and small business owners in multiple locations across our country. That makes every single thing I do worth it every day.
That's great. Well, franchising does create lots of employment opportunities. And even better than that, Gallup has done a study that says something like 2/3 of America's employees are tuned out. They're not engaged in their work. Asked if they would accept the same job all over again, they generally say no. They don't like the job for whatever reason it might be. Oftentimes, it is a work-life balance issue. Franchising does a better job of creating opportunities that gives you, as you say, work-life integration opportunities. And when young people discover this at the university, they will frequently say to me, especially upon graduation, they'll write me a note and say, you, but more so franchising what I teach, changed my life. When I came to the university, I had no idea what I really wanted to do, what I was going to study. I just selected my degree because it seemed like the best thing to do, talking to my parents and talking to friends. But when they add franchising to the mix, they see a career ahead of them that's very possible for them to get on track immediately. And even better, when I hear from parents who say, this changed my son or my daughter's life. They went off to college not sure of what the outcome would be in 4 years, and college isn't inexpensive. A Christian university, faith-based university, private university in West Palm Beach, it takes some money to attend our university. You do get an AACSB accredited education, and that includes franchising. And from that, so many people are changing their lives by meeting people like you at an expo and saying, I never heard of Preservan before, but this sounds like something I ought to do. And so I congratulate you for that, being part of the franchise community, helping people integrate work and life. That's very important today, going to continue to be important for this generation and beyond.
I appreciate that. And what you just said is exactly right. When we go through school, we are taught by our parents and by our teachers that we're supposed to grow up and we're supposed to go to a company and be employee 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if we're lucky, 20 or 30 years into being employee 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we might get a promotion. And then
Yeah.
we're gonna be employee 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with more responsibility, and
Yeah.
it's supposed to stay that way. That's supposed to be the status quo. And it's depressing because like I don't remember a time where my dad came home just super pumped about his day at work. He was super excited that he was putting food on the table, and he was super excited that he was able to provide a roof over our heads. But I don't ever remember a time where my dad came home and just talked about something amazing that happened to him at work. And I go
Yeah.
home and I have dinner and I talk to my kids about these cool people that I met in Austin or at this expo or that expo, or this amazing person that I met through a phone call to be a possible candidate. And I do a lot of work from home as well. I work in the I do I'm I guess the term now is hybrid, where I can work in the office or at home, but I'm
Yeah.
able to have these calls where my kids can hear the conversation. And then when I get off of those calls, it's so cool to hear my kids go, "Hey dad, what was ABC that you talked about? What's that mean?" And I'm able
Yeah.
to have these same conversations with my kids, and my kids get to see their dad excited about what he does every day. And
Yeah.
my
Terrific.
kids get to have my kids also benefit and experience work-life integration, because they're able to see that I work and that I do these things together. So it's a great thing.
Well, James, this has been terrific, and I'm going to see you on the road somewhere soon again, working in an expo, teaching people about franchising, bringing people into the wonderful world of what we do, known as franchising. So thanks for taking some time to talk to my folks through this podcast. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast with Dr. John P. Hayes. Tune in next time for more conversation around all things franchising.